There is never a dull day in investing. And let me tell you what's going on. So yesterday I get a phone call around 2:00 in the afternoon, and he's like, hey, Michael, this is, blah, 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 the real estate broker. I have a problem. I have a lady right now who's about to lose her house tomorrow, and we need to find her a solution. Now, as an investor, as a private money lender, as a mortgage broker, man, I have so many options. But the one thing that is virtually impossible is to find a solution under 24 hours. But that's what we had to do. I said, tell me what's going on. He's like, all right, this lady, she owns her house free and clear. It's worth $270,000. There is a tax lien on it for roughly $5,000. And the auction is at 10 a.m. in the morning, and you have to pay the tax lien before it goes into auction. Now in Florida, because that's where the property is, it's in Florida. In Florida, if you have a tax lien, once the sale begins in the auction, you that's it. It's done. It's lost. Someone paid it. You lost your house. But in certain places, like even Ohio, I had a good investor tell me, he said, it's a little bit different in Ohio, because in Ohio, if you have a tax lien and it goes into auction and someone purchases it, you actually, the homeowner actually has some time to, basically make things right. They have 30 days to pay the tax lien, and they can, then be free of it and don't have to give up their house. But in Florida, it's different. So we're under the gun. I said, tell me a little bit more. He says, she's an older lady, they have, medical problems, this and that. And the mortgage broker in me says, man, this lady needs a reverse mortgage. A reverse mortgage, basically it takes care of all the taxes and insurance and all that stuff, so that you don't have to worry about it, and you can live out the rest of your days in your home and not have to have stuff like this happen to you. So he gives me the phone number. And before I call the lady, I said, all right, let me do some digging, because I don't want to just call. I want to call with a solution, right? I want to call this lady and be like, hey, I know your situation. Here's some options. So I quickly called some investors. I said, look, I got this lady, she's, $5,300 in debt, we're in a tax lien. It's about to go to tax tomorrow. And I have a couple guys who's interested, because if there is no mortgage on the house, it's free and clear, they can run first lien on it. And if she defaults on it, they can basically get the house. So, as crazy as that sounds, this is business. And, I not only, my compassion piece of me, says, listen, I don't want to screw this lady over, and her default, right away. And then now this guy picked up a house for $5,000, which is a great deal. And, I just felt bad, right? I don't want her to be taken advantage of. So, I call a couple of the other investors. I reach out to one of the investors, told me, he said, hey, this will be smart. You need to go, call the tax collector's office and see what's really going on. Because who knows, right? I'm just hearing, what's from a third party. And he's actually right. So I called the tax collector and I said, okay, tell me, I'm calling about this property. We know it goes into auction tomorrow. We're trying to stop it. What can we do? And she says, to stop the auction, I need a money order. I need either a money order or a cashier's check in our office. You have to drop it off and hand it to us. You can't pay over the phone. They don't take credit card. They don't take check. So initially I'm like, oh my gosh. So not only do I have to find someone to come up with the money, we have to get it there. We have to get it there in time. Now, I just moved to Florida and I use US Bank. Now, my first reaction was, look, is there a way that I can give this lady this money? Is there a way that I can help her to keep her in her house? Maybe I could take first position, whatever that looks like. The problem is, as you understand, we have less than 24 hours and we have to draw up paperwork, we have to get it notarized, has to all be legal. I have to get the money order. I got to get it down to, the county tax collector, and I got to pay it. All this sounds virtually impossible. That's what it sounded. It felt impossible. But listen, I've said this before. No one will work harder for you than I will. So I'm going to find a solution. So I call the tax collector. I get all the information about that. I talked to some investors. I even reached out to other loan officers. I said, tell me about the reverse mortgage. This is a situation we're in. And everyone says, hey, we're under the gun so much. We have to just find someone who will, take a leap of faith. That's what they needed. We need to take a leap of faith here and help this lady out. So we go and, now I decide I'm going to call the lady, right? So I call the lady and I say, hey, how you doing? This is Michael Gabriel. I am a private money broker and I think I have a couple options for you. Tell me a little bit about the situation a little bit more so I can hear it from you. Now I'm talking to the daughter and the daughter's telling me, yeah, when my grandfather died, he left my mom the house who was elderly and, the wires got crossed of where mail was going. We thought the taxes and everything were being paid. And come to find out we don't have any taxes or we haven't been paying taxes for over 4 years now. And we need to, come up to date, at least pay back the past 3 years, which is the $5,500 or $5,300. And, what can we do? So I told her, I said, there's a few options. One, you can have an investor come in. They're going to take first position. They're willing to give you a short-term loan of 12 months, but you have to figure out a way to pay it back. And you are obligated because if you default on it, then they take the loan. They take the house because you defaulted on technically a loan and it's backed by an asset. That's option number one. Option number two is, get a loan again, right? $5,300 that we need. Either way, the $5,300 has to come. So get a loan, get the $5,300 and then do a reverse mortgage. And that reverse mortgage will then set your mom up for the rest of her life so that she doesn't have to pay anything. And I have someone who's ready to talk to you about that. But clearly, that's going to take at least 3 to 4 weeks. So if you would have told me this, if I would have got this situation 3 or 4 weeks ago, this would have been a totally different conversation and everything be good. And she understood that she was under some time constraint. And the third option is not one we wanted to hear, but just let it go to auction and try to figure it out. And she's like, well, we don't have really a place to go. This kind of when we first heard about the auction, we thought it was a joke because someone was calling us saying that our house is going up for auction and they wanted to give us cash for it. And we don't want to let it go because it is, been in the family since 1962. And, the total sob story. And I'm horrible at that, right? That's why my wife handles this type of stuff because I hear a sob story and I'm just like, I melt. And I'm like, oh my God, I feel so bad, right? How do we help you? Because I was in a situation where my grandmother passed away and all my whole childhood was in that house and I wanted to keep that house. I did everything I could to try to buy that house, but my aunt decided to sell it to someone else and I was so upset. So I knew what she was feeling, especially in this moment. So keeping the house was important. So I said, all right. She said, I would like to do, option 2, but I still don't know where to get the $5,300 from. And one problem with reverse mortgages that I also told her was that, well, if you want to do a reverse mortgage, you cannot do any type of cash outs or refinances or any liens can be on the house within a 12-month period. So even if someone did give her the $5,300 and they put basically a mortgage of first lien position on the house, then that basically this lady would have to wait an entire year to even be qualified for a reverse mortgage. And when I say first position, if you don't know what that means, first position means, hey, when this house gets sold, they are the first ones to get paid. So first position is usually a mortgage. Second position is normally like what they call the HELOCs or the home equity lines of credit. There could be third positions, there could be fourth positions, there could be all these different things. And when something sells, people are in line to get paid. So everybody wants to be the highest position, which is first position. So you can't have any of that if you want to do a reverse mortgage within 12 months. All right, that's another problem, right? So I kind of took a break from the deal and I kind of just thought in my head and I called my wife, I called this other investor and we're talking. I said, look, man, should we just give this lady $5,300, refinance her in prayer that she pays us back? And I've been burned before. The other investor felt a little uneasy about it. He's like, I would be willing to go half on it with you. I just don't know, how I feel about it. And I was feeling the same way because I don't want to be burned. So I call a good friend of mine, which I do many deals with him. And I said, all right, here's a scenario. Tell me what you think. And from a business standpoint, he said, all right, here's what we can do. How about instead of her refinancing, into a reverse mortgage. What if we gave her the 5,300 and that 5,300 would cover up that would stop the auction, and we can give her some time to pay us back. We could refinance her out, but the biggest concern is if there's other liens on this house that they can come right behind this auction and foreclose on this house too. So that was something that was interesting, because now you're almost throwing your money away. I mean, you're totally gambling, because say you pay off this tax lien, but then some other lien violation, like the city, some code violation lien comes in and they want to foreclose on the house. Now you're back to where you are. And being in this position where this lady is, maybe she definitely didn't have the money you have the equity, but you don't have the money to go, to pay all these fees. That's why you're in the position you're in. So we came up with a plan and said, hey, look, let's offer her option one. Hey, we pay the $5,500. If there's no other liens or no other issues, just give us 12 months, pay us back. Whatever the fees are, whatever interest we're going to charge, just pay us back. Option two would be, hey, look, if there are liens, let's clean this title, right? However much they are, $10,000, $20,000, whatever the liens are going to cost. We got back taxes we have to pay. There's a code violation lien, whatever that looks like. Let's clear the title. Let's take possession of the property. And then when the lady, all she has to do is keep up with her insurance and taxes. And now we become the reverse mortgage, and we sit on it until, the homeowner passes away. And then if the family wants to buy it from us, they can pay us any, what we put into it, and on top of any interest or whatever. And I thought that was a good option. I was like, okay, that's fair enough, because it gets you out of the auction. You don't lose your home. It allows you to, because these people are living without paying a mortgage, right? So they don't have to pay a mortgage. And I thought, well, that keeps them from paying a mortgage because they're sitting on it, and we become the reverse mortgage, which allows them to, keep the home and not have to have a payment. Because, prior to understanding this, is that they only had one income for the house, and it was disability, and it was under $2,000, right? So there wasn't a lot of income coming into the house that could support a lot of things or another payment. So we called the lady at it was 9 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night. We're going back and forth. I've been working on this thing all day. My wife is wondering, what are you going to do? And I told her the situation. She's like, that's like my mother. I was like, oh, she's getting soft on me, my wife. She's like, that sounds like my mother. And, what would you want your mother if she was in that situation? You don't want someone taking it from her. And how do we keep her in it? So my wife showed her soft side yesterday. But typically, I'm the one who's like, oh my gosh, how do we help them? Anyways, so we offer that. We said option one, if there's no liens, let's just cover it and you're good, and you can pay us back within the 12 months. Option two is, hey, we're going to take ownership. We'll clear out any titles. And when you guys are ready, we can, close on this deal. And she said, well, let me talk to my husband and I'll call you back. So me and the investor are talking, and we're talking about different strategies and, what can we do with the property? I mean, technically it has all this equity in it. So, if there are liens, you can cash. We could do a cash out because we're owners. We can take the cash out on it, and we can flip it and do whatever we need to pay off the thing. But the whole point was we have to secure our commitment to whatever cash out or payments that we're going to take. It cannot fall back on, the renter at that point. So all of that was, strategized on, thought about, and, we call the lady at 11:30 at night and we tell her, all right, this is the situation we're in. What option do you want? She says, I think I'm going to go with option number 2. And we hang up the phone, and then, it's 11 o'clock at night. And the other investor is like, my buddy's like, all right, go call the lawyer. Tell him to draw up the paperwork. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I already called him at 9:30. I could tell it was late. I felt so bad. Plus, I don't even know if he's going to answer. He's like, well, then you draw up the paperwork. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't want to do that. I want to make sure this is done correctly. There's no way I don't want to screw this up, because I don't want to be responsible if I put the wrong wording in and we're screwed. So, the lady texts back, so what we decided to do is hey, let's text her and at least get some form of agreement that way it could be binding, because we have to drive an hour in the morning. You got to go do all these things before the auction. And yeah, so I text her the terms. I say, okay, we're doing this. You're expected to do this. If anything happens, we do take the house because you can't fall back. That's one of the things. Like, you got to stay current now because we can't have this happen a second time. But you get to live there rent free for the remainder of your life. And, the family can buy it back, all these things. And she said, okay, let me think about it. And I'm going to leave it there. So stay tuned for part 2. What is going to happen? I'm thinking in my head, what is she thinking? What is she going to do? I mean, this is basically the deal you wanted. Because if not at 10 a.m., that's it. It's game over. Because the minute someone places one bid on that thing, it's done. All right, stay tuned. I'll let you know what she did.